Good evening and welcome to part 2 of the Bay City special retrospective, as I hit the wrong button here. Yes, this is new. I'm in charge tonight.
Oh God, why?
We're all doomed.
Abort!
Good night, everyone.
Yep.
For the record, I lost a bet.
He did lose a bet. And speaking of losing a bet, Tej did also save a bunch of money on his car insurance. We have OPT. Hey, Bay City Insurance calling. We're still accepting registrations for enrollment. Would you be interested?
No. I hear Bay City is not the best place to practice law in.
Hey, Chermy, you have won an all-expense-paid trip to Paris.
Oh, sweet.
Texas.
There is a Paris, Texas.
There's also a Paris, Maine.
Yeah, I think I knew that at one point.
Hey, Dark Falls.
Do I want to say yes?
I'm calling about your car's extended warranty.
I don't have a car.
I'm still calling about your warranty.
We've been trying to reach the vehicle owner.
So, did you just take all those scam bait videos I've been watching and just put them all into this?
Yes, I did. So, if you remember last week, we did our retrospective. Yes, we had Crimson Avix here. He is currently out. We'll deal with that later. He may show up. He may not. We'll see. But we led the discussion on the main series of the Bay City Chronicles, talking about kind of our experiences building the characters, building the world around us. This week, we're going to also look at our side projects, because we've got a ton of them. And more each day.
Some we don't always stream either.
That's true. But so with that, our side projects, we've got Next Gen, featuring the heroes of Drake, Alex, Giada, along with the new characters who I actually haven't met yet.
Vincent and Flo. We've also got Kalu City, where the Candy Crew crushes lizards with candy. Which, if you did not see our last episode, we did that on Friday, please do go look at the YouTube links once our lawyer gets his act together. And actually post all this stuff.
I do want to interrupt though. We talk about how that's like the Candy Crew. Like it starts off completely like candy and all that, and then it takes a complete hairpin 180 and goes into full-on angsty teen drama. It is mwah.
And then goes back to candy.
And then goes back to candy. It ends on candy. No, it actually ends on drama, but still goes back to candy anyway.
Drama with candy.
Candy, yes.
And then our final piece that we have on air is Chammy's, which I don't actually remember
Emerald City.
The title. Emerald City, there we go. I could not remember the title to save mine. Again, more angsty teenage drama. This time with weather devices.
That's true.
And a wonderful super extra ghost boy.
And an amazing rabbit boy that is trying to tease said extra ghost boy.
We had an entire montage dressing the rabbit up in a tuxedo.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That
while talking about the ghost's butt.
Yeah. It's a nice butt.
Okay. That's
demonetized already.
Back on track here.
What track? Happened every time.
What track? No. So we're going to kind of lean more towards those series, talk about... Well, let's start with my first question, Tej. What led us to create some of these?
Well, that's
besides the fact you can't stop playing games.
I mean, aside from the fact that I don't have a problem, I'm not addicted, I can quit anytime I
want. Do we need to get that over here in this chat too?
Yes, you do. Quote whatever it is. No, but how it started was actually having Crim not here at the start actually plays into the reason why we started playing a different game, because there would be times between people's schedules that they couldn't be around for certain things. And at the time when that was happening in Bay City Chronicles proper, we were at a point where we really couldn't run a session without the full crew there. Mm-hmm. So what really happened is we didn't want to... I know we have like the 4 or 5 people who watch us or whatever, but we didn't want to go Sundays without content. Right. So we got talking and like, well, what if we did a little side game type of thing? Yeah. I had just discovered at that point a game in the Powered by the Apocalypse system called Masks: The New Generation, which is basically it's another superhero game, but it's all about teenage superheroes coming into their powers, their relationships, and all of that. I'm like, okay, it's a lot more free form than Mutants and Masterminds is. So I thought it'd be like, okay, let's see what happens here, because and the real big reason that I like Masks from a GM perspective is the fact of, unlike Mutants and Masterminds, which is very much based in the D&D style of things, where as a GM you have to create your villain, your bad guys. You have to know what their toughness is, what their abilities are, what their to hit is, all of that. There's a lot less prep that goes into that from Masks. So in a Mutants and Masterminds game, as an example, if you guys go off the beaten path completely and you run into something that I didn't have prepared, it's a lot harder to wing it than it is in a Masks game. It's like, oh, I'm just going to jot something down real quick, and it's a lot more theater of the mind than Mutants and Masterminds is. And I wanted to see how you guys as a group would adapt to something like that. 2, I love the game, and 3, it allowed us to have something else on the channel when people weren't fully available.
And so we'll continue that, talking about Masks now, the game system we use for most of our shows now. OPT, Chammy, as other GMs, how has running Masks changed your play style, but also your GM style?
That's a big question.
Yeah. So, remember, I actually started off running a Mutants and Masterminds game called Middleton City for a little while before we started into, we started into the Mask stuff. And I think playing Masks really opened my eyes up much more to the greatness that is those, like, more open style RPG games. Tabletop games, instead of just being the stringent, roll dice all the time and whatnot. I feel like playing Masks and being a part of that has actually helped me relax in being a GM and just rolling with whatever happens, rather than being very stringent on things that I'm like, here's my story, whatever. I'm like, now I'm just yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, and that's clearly shown by having a candy war in my other.
Very, very true. Yeah, and yes, you bring a good point up there. It's a very much the story just happens whatever the players decide to do. Chammy, how has it impacted you as far as your play style and your GM style?
Well, GMing wise, I actually haven't GM'd in a while. Aside from this, because I used to run a different system called Iron Claw, which was sort of freeform like this in a lot of ways too. But when I jumped on to play Mass, I found that mentality really transferred well and even better. Because at my heart, when it comes to GMing and doing stuff, I like stories, I like characters, and so Mass is really good at bringing out those aspects. It's entirely designed to more or less be, I don't want to say a writer's kit, but it definitely is one of those things where it breaks down stories at their barest level. It makes you kind of boil it down to saying, oh, this is this kind of character, this is what's important to them, this is their character arc. And then while you're doing that, you can also just have fun, do whatever, and always have an answer for things. I do want to say, though, that play style-wise, I've noticed that playing Masks has dramatically changed the way that I approach games, in the sense that I feel less afraid of stepping outside of bounds and basically saying, hey, I want to do this, and not asking, hey, can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And Dark, I know you haven't GM'd in any of our series, but how has Masks versus the Mutants and Mastermind system impacted you as a player?
With Mutants and Masterminds, you have to kind of be a little bit more creative. So I've had a very Mass. I've had to go deeper into the RP of my characters, which is something I wasn't very strong at before. So getting that new mentality has helped quite a bit.
Oh, definitely. And part of this is with the mask system, and this is one of the things we had touched about last week, is you don't have one GM with masks. Everybody's a GM in this party.
Pretty much,
so,
yeah.
So going down that path, Teach, how has that impacted you? I know you've run solo GM, duo GM, masks. You walk into that and it's like, oh, my players want to cut a pool bench in half and smack the enemy with it. Okay.
Yeah. So that's that's a thing, because when I first brought masks to you guys, I had never run it. I had played it, but I had never run it. Pardon me, my head's cut off, so I'm going to adjust my camera here. So that had never happened. So it was a learning experience for me as much as it was for you guys. So the fun thing about masks, is, like you said, everybody is sort of a GM in a way, because in masks, and this is going to sort of like a bigger overarching thing here. What masks has taught me more than anything else as a GM, there's two things. Number one is to be adaptable, but number two, and this is a big thing that doesn't matter the system you're running, I found helps entirely as a GM, is masks. When you make NPC villains, it has a mechanic that asks you what their drive is.
Yes,
basically,
so nice.
what motivates them.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing your villain's motivations has been huge, and being able to use that and be like, okay, this person wants to do blah. Well, no, the players. So this person wants to do X. The players have done Y. Okay, how does that affect what they want to do? Okay, they got what they wanted. All right, I'm going to stop. We're done. We're good. Right? That's the big thing. A lot of people, especially when you're running Dungeons and Dragons or variations thereof, a lot of times as a GM you get into the whole fight to the death mode, that fight to the death mindset.
Yeah.
And once you know your villain's motivations, you don't have that mindset. You learn to, okay, it's not always this fight to the death mindset. It's okay, they're here for a specific goal. Sometimes it could be a fight to the death mindset because you just enchanted the giant rock golem and it's a mindless creature. It just wants to smash. But, the best example I can give of this is Mr. Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Freeze is a villain because he does whatever it takes to save his wife. He is not inherently evil, but he is a villain.
Right.
Right.
I actually want to jump in on that just a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
Because I want to say, like, a lot of games I've read when it comes to, like, reading the GMing section, especially, like, in recent years, they are always, like, telling you as a GM, like, don't have your villains fight to the death. Make sure that they, like, realize that other things are more important. But mechanically, the game doesn't encourage it, because if you don't kill the bad guys, you don't get the XP, you don't get to do your abilities, they have HP meters. But mechanically, Masks encourages you to have villains that do things other than worry about just going down and fainting at the end of combat or getting knocked out or killed. The system itself reinforces role-playing reasons, reinforces creative ways to handle problems. And I think when you have that mechanical backing behind that, it also encourages your players, which is why I think it sort of builds naturally into building better roleplay.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. It kind of leads me down, and with now that we have Mr. Crimson Avix here with us, leads down this level of...
I'm sorry, who?
It's Avix.
No, I'm sorry, we're calling about your computer. His warranty's out of.
Nora, can you do me a favor? Can you roll to take a powerful blow?
Fine. A 1. I withstand. But no, now that we do have Crim here, one of the things is trust. The trust that the two of you have with each other, you and Crim, as far as the Bay City proper story. But in Masks, the trust all of us have with each other to share the spotlight, but also to build that world as a team. let's kind of talk about how that trust builds itself and what we've gotten out of that where a lot of other games fail.
Well, it's funny you say that because coming into Mask, it was like I said before, it was a situation that I've never been in before. So me, you ended up working with Chammy more than anyone else so far, just because I was able to interact with his character more. Given that Patrick is kind of used to taking advantage of people who are like less inclined than he is.
Me, Vincent?
Oh yeah, Vincent. Sorry.
Yeah, like that's been kind of a neat interaction, which has been kind of fun. Playing off of a more like jerkish, intelligent character in Vincent, with a more meek character like Gianna.
Yeah, because for Vincent's character, he's not like a bad person. He's just very overly intelligent, so he overthinks that he's more important than other people. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So to continue on with the whole discussion, and I'm going to rewind the clock back a little bit to a discussion most of us were having a couple nights ago about the whole trust as a table in general. If you go and look at a lot of, I hate to shout out Reddit here, but a lot of Reddit posts, a lot of internet posts, there's a lot of these nightmare GM posts and nightmare story posts about how these players are posting how the GM pulled the haha gotcha on them. And every time you read one of these posts, it creates this sort of atmosphere when you're playing a game, when you go into a new game, like, I have to be on my toes at all time. And when you take a step back and realize that the whole point of a game is to have fun, if you're walking on eggshells and tenterhooks the entire time, how is that fun?
I mean, there's been a handful of times where you've done the gotcha type bit, but it's been in a way that actually helps the story and helps it move along, not just, hey, screw you guys, I'm the GM.
Right.
This is
Exactly.
Well, and a lot of the other games that we like, D&D and whatnot, that gotcha moment normally leads to you ripping your player sheet up and creating a new one because your character's dead.
Well, also, like, one of the things that builds that is that, we were talking about this as well, that when it comes to talking about, like, different kind of tabletop games, especially with games of groups that people aren't actually close friends with, or they're only playing primarily in game shops sometimes, there's sometimes this feeling of player versus GM, which comes out, where it's the idea of, like, what can players do to beat the GM? Or as a GM, how can I get past these overpowered players? How can I get around these problems that they keep bringing up? And the thing is, with the way that we've been playing, like, not just Masks, but, like, also looking at BCC and, like, how both Krim and Tej have been running it, the fact is, the way we play and interact with each other, we don't really have to worry about that. And I think that's helped build us up as players and make us feel more comfortable doing crazy things and making deeper stories.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely would agree with that.
To continue on that point for a second, to bring Krim into the discussion here, a lot of the time, like, during the BCC proper, there have been a lot of times where there really has been two GMs going back and forth. And I know we touched a little bit on this last time, and Krim can add on to this when I'm done. But if you look at the last arc we did before Krim took over as the primary GM, which was the whole, like, going into the alternate world, the whole totally out of space laser stuff, 90% of the scenes he did as his PC, I knew nothing about, and I was reacting just as much as you guys were.
Right. I remember that.
I do.
Now, that is something that there are a lot of GMs I've met who would not be cool with that.
Oh, yeah.
There are also a lot of GMs that I've met that I ended up really losing interest quickly in the story because every narrative was driven by the GM themselves. And as a GM, you want to lay the guide work, but you don't want to sit there and pave the road. You sort of want to, dig out the groove. This is where I want the story to go. But if you're the one paving the road too, then why even have players? Like, why have players that can't role play to a story when you have everything predetermined?
Right.
If I can jump on that, slightly going back to Mass just a bit, there was one rule in the GM guidebook of that I love, and I keep repeating it to myself now whenever I like look into games or I want to play or GM a game. And it's one of the rules is be fans of your players.
Mm-hmm.
And like they break it down as like saying like think of it like in a book, like this person's a star of this scene, the person's a star of this scene, etc. But the idea of like you want to be fans of your players, you're helping them to tell a cool story, and you're telling a story too. It's not about your story; it's about your story.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The discussion we were having as a group, Nora actually brought up the best point. Is for those who are looking for a different analogy, it's if you've played through all of Final Fantasy X. At the very beginning, you hear the voiceover with Tidus, and he's saying, "Listen to me. This is my story." Which most GMs, that's how you start off thinking as a GM, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get near the end, there's another voiceover. Listen to me. This is our story. Right. And that's what a good tabletop game should be, is not my story, but our story. And like you said, there are going to be times when this is a certain character scene. This is a certain character scene. But overall, it's everybody making the decisions and moving the story forward together.
Yeah, that definitely. It totally is a space laser, though. And Krim, I know you wanted to touch on that last week, so if you remember what you wanted to say about the space laser, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the whole thing about the space lasers, actually, that is really where the whole divergence of the GMing took place in BCC. That's when it sort of went from just TGE leading the story and everything to really that dual GM, because it was at that point where TGE's like, well, I have this planned and this planned and this planned, but I'm not really sure what I want to do with it. And I said, well, I have ideas. And it sort of just ran from that. He gave me what he had, which was the base work with who would eventually become Salome or Darkheart or whatever. But he gave me the framework, and I'm like, okay, I'll have fun with this, and took off with it. And at that point, it became a balance of how much do Tej and I want to discuss beforehand, and how much do we want to put our own little spin on the narrative. Because let's be honest, if Tej and I sit there and discuss every little thing that happens beforehand, first of all, that makes things actually more complicated for me and him, because then we both have to somehow agree on how we're going to react to each of the players' actions.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing that does is it creates a very mundane story, because all we're doing is pulling one storyteller out of it and basically having two people script the whole event. So having that balance to where we could sort of say, okay, well, this is just a guideline of what's happening, but then still allow that shock factor, I believe has been a real nice blessing, because when we finally went into the alternate dimension and I got to spell out like the whole US in its alternate form and sort of incorporate all these different ideas that I had, being able to do that and sort of throw Tej for loops was kind of nice.
Nice.
And I do have to ask Tej this question, because I think this is the important thing is, and I don't know if you guys touched on it earlier. I know we didn't touch on it last week, but it sort of goes back to the whole, and we can get into this if we have time later, but like a few of the early episodes, Paradise Lost specifically, the one where Phantasm had left the party.
Searching for friends.
Yes. The emotional factor for the players is huge, But as a GM, if you're not invested enough to get emotionally attached to storylines like that, and if situations don't occur that sort of trigger your emotional like feelings about the story, then you should not be GMing that story anymore, because you should be just as emotionally invested in those characters as your players are.
Yeah.
To bring that full circle here, we mention Paradise Lost all the time, whether it's in this thing last week or in our discussions, because Paradise Lost was really the first session that we had as a group that was filled with RP and emotion.
Mhm.
Like, there was some beforehand, but that's really where everything happened. Then there was the whole searching for friends thing, where we even had the little shout out to what's the Surf Shack in there. I will say, having to do the Hawaiian accents, brother, was not fun, but it was also a blast. But to me, like, those two issues, I was emotionally invested in them, but I was emotionally invested in them for you guys as players and characters, because those were really the first two big emotion-heavy ones that we ran. Right, so I had so much that I was trying to make sure happened and push that. I was emotionally invested, but not nearly as much as I was when we got a little bit later on into things. When, like, for example, when Krim told me, "Hey, this is how I want to end Phantasm's arc," my response was like big cartoon style gulp.
Right.
But even that, like, one of my favorite scenes that we had was Lutra and the rest of the crew, but Lutra talking to Hunter from the future AI.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot.
Like, you abandoned me.
Right.
And yes, Hunter is sort of my GMPC in this whole scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But the arc that the arc that started there and then went to the whole Lutra on Blitz, with Hunter basically turning the cold shoulder on everything, that's where I, as a GM, like, nope, now I know I'm fully invested in all of these characters.
Right. And the thing I liked about that future scene is it was interesting because it was kind of, the Blitz arc kind of like switched the roles a bit, because in that future, Hunter was, or Hub at the time, was like screaming how everyone abandoned him and whatnot. And I remember Lutra at one point just stood in front of 4 guns and is like, "If you really think that, shoot me." And then we go to Blitz, where Lutra actually abandons Hunter and everyone else, but Lutra's just like, he actually abandons everybody.
Yeah. Which was a nice turn of the scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, my take on this is, as far as systems, and we've kind of talked about all of that. We started with the mutants and masterminds, and honestly, I don't think masks works for at least me if we haven't done the systematic of mutant and masterminds. Not having the RP background, having those tools, and having those things to latch onto to get me through a scene really helped.
Right. Well, like, if I can just real quick, the progression of my playing a game, like, I started with D&D, which is extremely structured, at least the way I was playing / running it. You have powers, you pick powers, you use powers, that's it. We go to Mutants and Masterminds, and then we had played a game called Iron Claw in the middle of there, which had a little more customization, but still kind of the same thing. Go to Mutants and Masterminds, where you create your powers. Like, yeah, you have powers and you use them, but you get to create them, and it's literally anything you can feasibly put into a game. And it took me a very long, and Teach can attest to this, it took me a while to understand what that meant, because I was so used to, like, picking a power and just having it. And so going from, like, extremely structured to Mutants and Masterminds, I think is what I needed to then go into Masks, because if I went from D&D to Masks, I would have been completely confused. Like 100% confused. And if your first game is Masks, I think you're going to be a little, like, maybe a little lost, unless, like, theater, like, was your thing in high school, kind of a thing.
Or online role-playing.
Yeah, or online role-playing, but yeah.
But no, that you actually addressed what I wanted to address there with the if Masks is your first game thing, so cool.
No, absolutely. Masks is the first game is one of those things where I think I quit. I think I don't play.
Probably.
I think I lose interest.
Country.
What?
It said that's all it would have taken?
But I mean, as far as I needed the hand holding. I needed the slow entry, and that's and we've talked about it. That's kind of what we've done. We slow entried with Krim and then Lutra kind of leading, and then you see Anton pairing with Kestrel, Anton growing, Anton changing powers every week.
Anton basically going through power puberty.
Yes. But then you see you turn around though and you see us play the sideshows. You see us play. Drake is the leader of the three, even though Alex is the Power Ranger, almost, or the Sentai, the Super Sentai. He's a Power Ranger. Let's be honest. He's a Power Ranger.
Oh yeah.
Drake really drives that story in a lot of ways. Apollo drives that story all over the place.
The last broadcast we did here was basically Apollo driving plot. For those who don't know, Apollo is one of Nora's Mask's characters. He is basically Salem from Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Pretty much, yeah. And yet, somehow...
It's that way. He's using Paul Strats right now.
Somehow, with a Brainiac who has all the gadgets in the world and can do literally anything, and has a laboratory with... I think the entire food industry in his sub-basement. We have a Fox who can teleport into any place. Between the two of those, Apollo has done more damage to all of the enemies combined.
Oh, the cat's the muscle.
The cat is the muscle. Far. I don't know how that happened. The four-legged cat is the muscle of the team.
Right, but I think the follow up of all this though is we start going into Mask. We talk about that. Mask is a system where we want to fail. Failing is fun. So we bring up Dark here. Dark hasn't played as much Masks as the rest of us, but we riff on Dark a lot about rolling ones. Wow, comments are silent.
Yeah.
Well, in Mask, rolling a 1 just means you get to have more fun with the scene.
Yeah.
Piggybacking off of that, I remember my first game of Max. We were in a movie theater, and I rolled a 1, and it turned out to be probably one of the better scenes of the show because it was a mixture of me and Cham's character, and the follow for it ended up in something absolutely hysterical.
Did you end up controlling Mecha Kong and having a wrestling match with Sasquatch?
That's right.
That sounds about right.
That was about
But
right.
that we were able to play off it like 5 episodes later, where something very similar happened. I was like, I can use this, and teacher's like, "Oh, you can because there's president now."
Yep, yep, you've done it already.
Yeah, but go ahead, teacher.
But I want to actually bring that up again because you brought up another good point. There is back to the whole D&D system. Oh, again, another thing, and I don't want to keep interrupting with sort of like the little GM anecdotes, but I think it's somewhat appropriate. It goes back to the whole trust thing again. But a lot of times you hear stories about players are afraid in D&D, things like that, are afraid to fail.
Yeah,
because a lot of times they're afraid of what the GM is going to, like, what stupid thing. How am I going to get punished for something that I have no control over?
right.
Where Mask literally has a move that says, lose your powers in an uncontrollable way, GM's decision.
Right.
Well, players are either afraid to fail, or they're afraid of being unremarkable.
Yeah, I can see that
That's
too.
the thing that happens in those games too, where like if you don't min-max your stats properly, you become nothing, or you become ineffective. You don't do anything. That doesn't happen in these games.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, like, Masks, again, I think it's taught me as a GM is it's okay if your players fail, because when you fail in Masks, now, real quick, Masks is based off of 2d6. And basically, a 1 to 6, it's not a failure, it's a you don't do what you wanted. And that's the big thing is just because you failed the roll doesn't mean what you wanted doesn't happen.
Yep.
It means there's a consequence tacked onto it.
Yep.
And I think as a GM, having that mindset is a good thing. Yes, you're playing Mutants and Masterminds. you roll, you didn't hit them. Okay, that's not a failure. They're just their armor blocked it, or they dodged out of the way. But in other scenarios, having the ability to be like, no, you still get what you want, but
Yeah.
I think, Teach, another thing to kind of jump in on that with is in Masks, like the chat may not know, the GM doesn't roll dice in Masks.
Yeah, that's the most amazing thing I realized at one point.
Yeah, only the players roll dice, and basically when the players like roll poorly or roll in certain ways or whatever, that's when the GM can like push narrative in certain directions, or like the GM can choose like their options.
Mm-hmm.
But like rolling badly doesn't mean your stuff doesn't work. It means that somebody else gets to move the narrative.
Not only that, but when you roll like a miss in Masks, whatnot, the GM can also just what we like to call anyway, banking a hard move. Just because like something bad didn't happen on screen doesn't mean something bad didn't happen someplace else. Like for one time, Alex was trying to hack into something, and I rolled horrifically on my roll. Well, Alex still hacked into it. The problem was, as we found out later, somebody else saw it.
Yeah, somebody found that.
Yeah, so again, just because you fail at what you roll, just because you roll a 2 to 6 for a miss in Masks doesn't mean that you don't do the thing you want. It just means that the GM can like figure out like, okay, what you did like took way too long, and now there's like police outside or the enemy's outside now waiting for you because you took way too long or whatever.
There's consequences or buckets of water.
Or buckets
exactly.
of water.
Now, Krim, I want to bring you into this discussion because I know you haven't played a whole bunch of Masks, and I know, like from discussion with you, I know you prefer the structured style, the more structured style than the more freeform that Masks offers. So I want your opinion on the difference between the two.
Nora didn't send this to me, so I didn't really have time to dwell on it.
Oh, Nora, will you send it to him so he has time to dwell on it?
Send what? Wait,
dwell
send
on
what?
this.
Then again, we were expecting Nora to do a job, so...
Wait, send what? I didn't get anything.
Yeah, none of us did.
No, yeah.
I mean, it's nice to have structure, but if we don't know what's being thrown at us... no, and don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't like Max. But I would have to say, and part of this is just discussing what our thoughts are on what we've been doing. And my biggest difficulty with Masks is there's so much ambiguity to how the structure is that, especially for new players, I feel that it is something that can't progress correctly. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is the first time I looked at the book, and we can get into my character in a little bit, but the first time I looked at the book, it was pretty much thrown into the fight with stage fright at the movie theater.
Mm.
I may have done a little bit before that, but that's really the first thing in Masks that I remember. I know that I had that little... No, I did have some episodes before because I had the whole thing at the house and everything.
Yeah, with the chicken nugget.
Yeah, but even with that, like, the role-playing felt 100% spot on, in place, no problem. But when it came to interactions, mm-hmm. and you roll a dice, and you look at what the game manual says, or the book says, for what happens when you roll a 10 plus, you get to ask two of these questions. The questions feel very, very restrictive.
That I can agree with.
And because of that restriction, you might not be able to word or get information that you truly want to help feed the story that you want as a player, which creates, as I said, a lot of ambiguity. Because I know one thing that I wanted, and it never really took with my character, is I wanted a lot of interaction between his futuristic self and everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But there was really no, okay, this event I remember learning about, or them saying something that just triggered that small thing in the future, because there was really no chance for that because of how the questions are worded. And that's my only problem with Mask. It isn't that it's not as structured in the ways of Mutants and Masterminds or D&D or Pathfinder or anything like that. It's the fact that with what they give you, it feels like a lot can be missed.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Actually, one of the things I really agree with you on that is in a couple of our games, including the ones that we didn't play on stream, there have been a number of times where our players basically want to ask, like, do I notice that? Or can I see that? Mm-hmm. Or, like, basically they're looking for what's essentially a perception roll. Like, they want to see something basic. And there is no question that you can roll for, like in the mass basic moves, that basically, that is a standard perception roll of, do I notice this thing? Or, like, there's no, like, blanket perception roll. No, do I see this? Do I hear this? They're all questions that kind of can lead you in that direction. But if you as a player just kind of want to know something that other games just make as a basic, like, perception roll, that's a little bit harder to boil down to in math.
And to build on that, as a GM, it's also hard to, like, you know, to do that for your players. It's like, okay, roll to assess the situation, but I didn't want you to assess the situation. I wanted to see if your character noticed, like, X, Y, or Z. So then it's like, okay, well, make your superior roll, then I'll figure it out. I mean, obviously, Mask has custom moves you could just make, but it feels silly to just make a move to make sure, like, see if you saw something or not.
Weirdly enough, the GM guide in Masks basically tells you to always tell your players those things, like, if you think they would know it. It says don't hide things from your players.
Right.
And it's kind of strange, because in things like D&D and Pathfinder, you have something called, like, passive perception, or passive such and such. And, like, those can be kind of tools used for the same thing, where if you have a guy who's hidden, but not hiding very well, you can look at your player's passive perception and say, you know what, you notice this guy trying to pretend to slink across the wall.
Right.
Whereas in Mask, you kind of have to almost know your players and know their characters and what they can typically do to be able to say, hey, you know what? You notice a shadow moving over there. What do? Like, you almost have to take the reins a little bit more and kind of tell them they notice things instead of letting the players discover stuff like that in that kind of way.
How I tend to look at it from that perspective, and this is something I've had to learn, and Krim and I had a conversation about that, kind of similar to what he just said, which sort of propelled me to think about this. How I think about that situation is I actually take it on a character-by-character basis. Mm-hmm. And, okay, what is your character? Like, I'm going to use Gianna from Next Gen as the example. Extremely powerful mage. A little on the oblivious side?
A little bit.
So she's probably not going to notice the same things that someone like Alex would, who is hyper-focused on certain things. So what I do is I tend to take a look, okay, what are these characters' abilities? What is that? And which one would notice more minute details than the other ones would? Like, that just, to me, is, okay, like, I'm still going to give you guys the information, but it's up to, like, you know, so-and-so to communicate to everybody, so...
Mm-hmm.
So, OPT, you brought something up, and it's one of my favorite... Yes, why did you bring it up? It's one of my favorite things about Masks, actually. The custom moves.
Oh, yeah.
Love them, hate them. They are fantastic because they're just silly little things that add flavor and add some stakes to the world. Steak, yes. So, I'll start with my favorite custom move that I've experienced, which is mine.
You mean the one I designed specifically because you kept showing up late to sessions?
Yes. it's, when you make a dramatic entrance, roll superior.
So before actually we get into the custom moves, I think because it's one thing to talk about like mutants or masterminds and the structure of D&D, okay? Because those sort of use the same sort of strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom. Like mutants or masterminds has an 8 skill system as opposed to a 6 that D&D has for attributes, but they're pretty much the same. Masks and most Powered by the Apocalypse systems run in a completely different zone. So basically, before we get into that, a little quick aside of how Masks works, or Powered by the Apocalypse system. They run off of what are called labels, and each one represents a certain thing. Too far one direction or the other, you're too much of that. Masks specifically has 5 labels: Danger, Freak, Savior, Superior, and Mundane. And those scores of those labels range from anywhere from a -2 to a +3. And that's how you adjust your rolls. Basically, they sort of define, like, if your danger is a +3, for example, the world sees you as somebody who's willing to pick fights, quick to anger. But you see yourself as someone daring, dangerous, the whole I'm Darkwing Duck mentality, but you're not type of deal. So when we say roll plus X, basically what that means is take your 2d6, see what your score for that skill is, roll them, and add them together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I do remember in one of our sessions rolling a 0 in Masks.
Oh, I've done that a couple times, yeah.
That was
always feels good.
Yeah. Thankfully you can't miss any harder than rolling a 6 or under. So.
But again, as we touched on, missing isn't bad.
Right. Although
it's just a mess.
Right. Well, Teach, I don't know about you, but sometimes like the worse the miss is, the different thing I think about happening.
Well, yes and no, because for me, part of it's like, okay, describe what you wanted to do.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, clearly, yes.
Yeah. Like, to me, like, custom moves, like, Nora brings up the dramatic one. To me, I like the ones that sort of build to the world around you. Like, one of my favorite ones was the one I sent to you that we ended up using, was the when you go trick-or-treating as a group.
Right.
Like, that there's a thing for that. But, like, ultimately, whether it comes to, custom moves and masks or whatever, we're sitting here, we're smiling, talking about the stupidity of these. Like, that should tell you right there.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's kind of nice from a GM perspective to have something slightly crunchy to go into, where it's like, I'm going to make this custom move. It's going to have all these potential ideas for people to trip across or come across. This is the avenue they can use to get information. It's like, if you want a little bit more structure, like the GMing side of it, it's like, oh, neat. I can provide breadcrumbs here. That way they can avoid the custom move entirely and not do it at all.
Right. Or you can just make up one on the fly, which has happened to, I think, all of us. And I remember at one point, at least in our offline game, I don't remember if I did it in Kaylee City or not, where I'm like, wait, I need a custom move for this, hold on, and I just, like, take 5 minutes, right up, move, and I'm done.
Or, I think my favorite one is, hey, I'm in the middle of something, I need a custom move for blank, you got one? I have gotten that DM from him before, is, I need a custom move for X, do you have one?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I always pick Teach's brain, like, do you have anything for this? Or some suggestions or whatever?
The scary thing is the answer is usually yes.
Oh, yeah, no, it is. Although, to be, like, what was it? The episode of Mask when Alex goes into, like, a counseling session, and the counselor has a bunny rabbit, whose name I can't remember offhand.
Yeah.
Mr. Hopkins, right. And, like, Teach just immediately starts, like, talking this custom move, like, when you, like, when you get, or I don't remember how it started, but it was like when you go to see the counselor.
Yeah, when you go, yeah. Do you tell whether or not you play with hop skip?
Right, yeah, and I remember just staring at the screen and just yelling, "You have a move for this? You were ready for this?" Because it was just a snap thing that Alex went to the counselor. It wasn't something I had planned or anyone had planned for. I just like, this makes sense. He needs to go talk to somebody. And that you even had a move for that. It was like, why?
Well, speaking of things not making sense in that storyline, I guess we can touch on my character.
Oh, yes.
Because I think that Mask in that situation, and we sort of had to do it a little bit before with Nora and Anton, but not to the point that we did it with my character in Mask. But just writing a character, and I think this is one thing that Mask actually does assist with well, is writing a character that can't be there for every single session.
Right.
And I mean, honestly, I've had a blast with it because my character adds absolutely nothing to the storyline.
Well,
Like, you could totally do that storyline without me, but being able to come in and be the comic relief, I mean, quite literally the Deadpool of Next Gen, because that is exactly who Flo is based off of. Is a mix between Flo and Geist from Sentinels of the Multiverse.
Good choice.
The fact that my character can come in and be that, and it just sort of, I mean, pardon the pun, but it just sort of flows.
right.
Yeah. Although we would not have Mr. Butters.
I was
Yeah.
like, you did create a supervillain.
You did.
Like,
Yeah.
literally, like the reason that we're on part 3 of the story we're on in Next Gen right now is because literally for 70% of part 1 we were in Gianna and Hunter's math class, and Krim as Flo was on the outside just causing crap.
Yeah.
Indeed. And to the point where he got a teacher fired.
Like, that's not moving the story.
And he filled his car with tubs of butter.
Yes.
I mean, it's better than Kit
About
Kats.
that. Yeah. No, it's well, yes.
We literally ended the section with the sign that just said "No parquet."
That's great.
Yeah.
But
And then
speaking,
the opening scene of the following session was Dark's character in an arcade tricking the little button thing to win just copious amounts of money in tickets.
Right. And then
So-
just
That was probably one of my favorite episodes of my personal character's arc in that.
yeah.
so speaking of personal favorites and characters and stuff, you know, we're gonna go around the table on this question.
Mhm.
I'll start us off. Favorite character scene that's not yours? Mine has to be the Kit Kat cannon scene. That started the downfall of that show. But more than anything,
You mean the rise, sir?
well, the rise, yes. Well, the no rises, but that's a whole nother episode. But no, that scene in a nutshell. You have the absurdity of a character, but it builds Cal's depth. You don't see it coming. It's not set up. It's spur of the moment. And it has led to what is now, 20, 25 episodes of candy-themed destruction.
19.
Yeah, 19. Yeah.
19. So almost 20 episodes of candy-themed
Yeah,
destruction.
there is always a candy weapon in the game now, and I'm perfectly okay with this.
But that scene alone made Cal's character.
Pretty much, he went from a chemist to a gastro
A gastro
engineer.
But something so trivial, something so throwaway in that scene became something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was there.
Well, what's funny is the impetus for that scene was a couple of scenes prior to that. We were at the gas station, and Chammy's character, Sink, decided he was going to buy all of the Kit Kats in the gas station on Cal's credit card.
Yeah.
So we had them in the trunk from a previous scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was continuity.
I wanted candy. I just didn't want to pay for it.
Exactly.
So teach. I want yours and Crim's last because y'all have GM'd most of the shows. So Dark, let's go to you. What? Pick a moment from any of the shows where a character's really just laid it on for you.
I want to say my character was involved, but it was more the way that OPT played it, and that was the scene between OPT and myself on the plane after Phantom had passed away.
Yeah.
I know my character's involved, but just the way that byplay worked out will always be one of my favorite scenes of that whole arc.
Yeah. That was...
I'll allow it.
No, it was good.
Yeah.
That was just... like anything cooling down from that whole arc was just it was great. Very like, especially where I was at that moment as far as being in Lutra's head, like. And it was nice how that then transitioned into the next arc, especially when Malkier finally shows back up again and is basically doesn't want to talk to Lutra at all because, you know, of everything he's done. And then Lutra's also not talking to anybody because he's on drugs. So it was interesting.
I feel like any scenes that had you guys in the plane, like, just chilling out.
The plane was
always a great scene.
The plane was a great foil for a lot of things.
Can I interrupt and say I stole the plane? Totally stole the plane idea because the whole foil for that is I stole that directly from Criminal Minds.
It's fine.
Oh,
it's a good show.
That's okay because I got to describe the plane, and the plane was an exact mental ripoff from the plane from X-Men.
yes.
I
I picture that every single time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've had darks. Chammy.
Oof. It's difficult. Last time that we were on here, I did talk about a scene that I thought was really cool from like the BCC era before I even joined in. So it's always fun to like watch you guys do your thing. But like when it comes to like all of our shows here and a really good scene that I enjoyed, that I was not personally involved in. Oh, it's so tough because there's so many. I'm trying to remember. There were some really good ones between like Alex and his mom that were really tying to me. And I was trying to remember a specific one.
What do you mean, Alex's mom?
Oh, jeez.
I love the voice that Tina uses
Right.
for Alex's mom, but at the same time, I love the conversations they have because they feel so real, like mother-son kind of relationships. You get little tidbits of like what happened in the family. You get little bits about the mom's character, like she thinks Chase is actually kind of hunky.
Right.
Like just little things like that just build up like little world bits. But at the same time, like it's always really interesting because you're always telling like almost a self-contained story there. Like when Alex is on his own with his mother and they're in their place, it just always is something interesting. Like when there's a camera in the family's picture, and like I don't know, I always find myself especially engaged when that's going on.
No. So OPT.
So
what do you have?
The obvious answer is the Kestrel pile driver with Anton, but that was way too easy. So really, one of the most to me, one of the most emotional scenes that I really love that I wasn't really like a part of, as in like my character was obviously there but wasn't running any of the show, was actually Gianna's moment of truth. Just ripping that tear into like the dreaming world, but really that whole idea of like confronting her fears, her own powers, and like taking that control that she never had, and ending the scene with like all of her manifestations like showing up around her, just like consoling and hugging her, and then just ending the comic there was brilliant. Number one, and just the scene in general was already kind of crazy as it was, and to then have it flip to one of the most serious parts of that entire issue was fitting for that game, number one, and two, it was not the end of the arc per se, but kind of the end of that. I mean, obviously, because then Gianna changed players' books, but it was like the end of that character arc for her and into the next one, so to speak. And so that's the most memorable one that I can think of just off the top of my head. But I remember thinking that was really flipping awesome as he was describing what was happening.
It was a lot of fun to do.
All right, Krim. Oh, go ahead, Jimmy.
Okay, slight rewind. So I remember the specific scene that I can point out. I was like trying to remember back to it. The locker room fight when we lost Alex, basically.
Oh yeah.
You guys were going so nuts.
Oh, the ponytail.
Yes.
The man bun.
I was going to call it a mohawk. But yeah, you took down the guy's man bun. Like, you had all these options for ways to hurt this guy, and you go for the hair.
That's not even the first time that we've cut off somebody's hair as a method of offense.
It really isn't.
Right with Kismet, y'all did it too.
We don't like bad haircuts here.
We don't like bad hairdos. It's a thing.
So Krim, I'm holding onto my desk. I'm braced. What's your scene?
It's not anything that you need to brace for. So I wasn't a GM for this part, but the GM and me, one of my favorite moments in gaming is not only when a character has a big defining moment, but when a player has a big defining moment. And this specific player is going to hate me for bringing this up because I think this was one of the most frustrating and hated parts of this entire endeavor that we've had at Bay City Chronicles. But I think it's helped them grow, at least in my eyes, the most as a player. And that was Lutra's battle with the medallion and the voice inside of his head.
Oh. Okay.
Some dev action.
I love Dev. I love that arc.
The dev arc and what OPT had to do to really dive into Lutra's character and think how each and every response to each and every action the side of his head was going to go. It was as thrilling for me to watch as it was for OPT to have to deal with it, because I don't know how many times we've gotten messages from OPT in our group chat saying, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
and one of my favorite parts about that arc was that we all knew what was going on, and that we purposely lied to Lutra.
Yeah.
Our characters knew what was going on, and that made that scene so much more powerful. Was that?
And you know how hard it is to play that? Because, like, you, as a player, you know what's going on, so I have to jump into Lutra's head. But I do remember at one point just being frustrated because of that dichotomy of trying to be like, okay, he's, like, because he loves this team, he wouldn't not trust them, and then I had to jump into, but... and that was just like it was so back and forth in my own head, just trying to figure out how Lucha was going to react on screen was a little, but like looking back at it, it was, and even at the time, I loved, like, I end up loving that much more than I thought I was going to. And
it was definitely a good scene.
Especially
that's back to the whole trust thing we were talking about too.
What'd you say?
That goes back to that whole trust thing we were talking about too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, for me, I mean, I obviously had a pretty easy time playing Phantasm. I absolutely love the character and everything, but that was one of the biggest struggles as a player, is to think how I was even going to play that for the interaction, because I had to do things to sort of how the character would. I had to step into my character's mind, but I also had to do it in a way where I'm like tiptoeing, because I'm like, I don't want to go too far and make OPT hate me. So I mean, it was an amazing journey. Like, not only on my side, but just to watch how you play it, because I really think, like, you sort of already grew attached to Lutra at that point, but I think that sort of changed how you thought for Lutra.
Oh, it did, absolutely. Because it made me realize how much he actually was friends with. I mean, because he had that absolute, complete emotional breakdown when he figured out what had actually happened, and I'm like, that's real to him and to me. That's how I would feel at that point if some deity was trying to take over my head and I didn't trust my friends because of it. He was devastated after that, and I very much remember after that whole thing finished, like, just kind of walking away, just being like, I need to not cry my eyes out right now.
From my perspective as the GM,
I want to come back to Dev in a minute for a different topic, but go ahead, Teach.
What I was going to say is, from my perspective as GM, it was sort of that same thing, because, like, I want to, like, okay, I know what this being's motivation is. So I know what she's going to try to do. She is a manipulator. She's going to try and whisper sweet nothings. Yeah. So I needed to do that in such a way that, okay, I'm not going to be pushing it too far. I don't want to push, I don't want to create that divide. And I think that was one of the first real moments where it's like, okay, this is where that trust is really being tested.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, Tej, your moment, and then I want to come back to Dev.
Yeah. So the thing is it's hard for me to come up with a moment where I don't have characters involved because every NPC is kind of a character of mine.
Yeah.
Right. So we discussed probably one of my favorite ones last time. I don't want to rehash the water skiing. So another one of my favorite interactions, or one of my favorite things that you all did as a group, was if we go back into the Kismet storyline when you guys were in England and you were trying to get into the castle, Tintagel Castle, all that castle, and the ambrosia salad.
Oh, I remember that scene.
Yes, and we had 20 minutes on you. And I forget who it was. Whether it was Anton, one of you, filling up the frequent customer card for the ambrosia salad.
Yes.
Yes, that was the thing.
So random.
Yes, and the sneaking around the castle, the ambrosia salad, and that's just. That was just like something stupid and funny, and it was 20 minutes of just stupid RP, which was just, for me as a GM, I love that.
Right.
And that lovely ties into what I was going to ask about Dev. We have a lot of just sticks around here. Following up, what stick has been your favorite throughout the seasons?
My, like, shtick?
Yeah, running gag.
Running gag.
Oh, shtick. Okay.
Yeah, I thought you said stick.
Stick.
Like, what?
Me too.
You did say stick.
I'm Texan, forgive the accent.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there's a stick in the mud.
So we're going to start backwards this time. We're going to go with Tej this time. Start with you.
You're giving me the easy answer this time.
Yes.
Honestly, my favorite shtick was the Lutra questions. And hey, I've got a question. And the look of panic on everybody's face of the please don't ask me.
Which is funny because that's actually what I wanted to bring in because the dev scene is where that first started. Lutra and Anton get sent separate from the group in Egypt, and on the boat.
Taco Tuesday.
Lutra's just having a grand old time because he doesn't suspect a damn thing, and he's just like, hey, it was just the most random thing in the world. I don't even remember. No, I do remember why, because I'm like, I wanted to do something kind of funny, and he's got Anton alone, and it was a long boat ride, so I'm like, he's got to be the annoying, like, hey, what's that? So I just wanted to ask something silly, and for some reason I decided to do it every episode.
And that totally turned into such a thing. And no one wanted to answer the question, but everyone was trying to be prepared to answer whatever came their way.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to give OPT a chance to breathe. Krim, what's your favorite?
I mean, I could say the white light. Because, well...
That's trope, not stick.
But I don't think I'm a good option because you said we want to let OPT breathe, and I think my favorite shtick was the otter cannon.
I tried to read the otter cannon. What was the otter cannon?
The otter cannon was an ongoing shtick between Hub, Ventus, Phantasm, and Lutra. And basically, every time we had to get Lutra somewhere fast, our solution was an auto rocket, firing him out of a cannon
or whatever
as fast as possible.
Yep. And where this came from was back before I was supposed to run. I was supposed to play a character whose hero name was going to be Rush, who's going to be a kinetic energy manipulator. And the joke was I'd be able to touch something and impart kinetic energy on them. So the joke was, one of these days I'm just going to touch Lutra, touch the otter, and make an otter rocket.
And then we had Otter Rocket.
And then we had an Otter Rocket.
All right, Dark, save OPT, please. What's yours? Besides rolling ones. Because that's just a thing that happens.
I mean, that's par for the course. I think it would have to be the kill steals. So it's always amusing that it just never seems to fail.
The funniest thing is that just happened every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. One. Party's got the boss dead. Kill steal. What?
I'm there when it counts.
I swear to God, I think there was one battle where that was your only hit, like Malkir's only hit on the guy was the final killing blow.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. Dark's ability to steal a kill is just unnervingly unbelievable.
It's not even intentional; it just happens.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
That's the best part.
Malkir is just like the ultimate glass cannon. He either destroys things or he just absolutely misses.
It's either over in one turn or we're going to be here a while.
I mean,
And I know it wasn't a shtick. I know it's not a shtick, not an ongoing thing. But we have to have a quick honorable shout out to Anton getting field goal.
Yeah, and Apollo now apparently. That's the thing.
Almost.
That's not a shtick. That's a meme.
That's true.
All right, Chammy, what do you got for us?
I actually kind of have a tie between two, just because
Give them both.
Dark Sudoku.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I love the Sudoku from Altair. Like, I can't pass a Sudoku book in the mall anymore without immediately thinking of Malkir.
I can't either.
Yeah.
In fact, I usually take a picture and stick it in PCC Discord just to
Yeah.
mess with Dark.
It's just so random to have like this crazy, awesome assassin like ready to like slit a guy's throat, and then he's like calmly doing his Sudoku puzzles. Just and the fact that he may be bad at them, but we don't know.
He is not bad at them. It just ignores his head.
That's why they're burned all over the place.
Just a little thing following him around. But the other thing I actually enjoy, which may not be entirely a shtick, but it's definitely something that has become a recurring element for us, and that's been stage fright in Next Gen. Or at least rather, TGE's evil laugh characters.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, his little fake voice is there, and it's so over the top. He's just eating the scenery so loudly. I just enjoy watching that from a player perspective and from an audience perspective.
And the fact that everyone wants to punch him in the face.
Yes,
But
he makes them very punchable characters.
Teach's voices are fantastic.
They are.
And they add so much flavor. My favorite is it's the only one that I can pick. It's the otter with the crossbow. Bing! Bing! It started off as something OPT just wanted to have it because he had
wanted a range attack.
He wanted a ranged attack.
And we ended up tying it to the story, to his backstory anyway.
And it was a fantastic story. Like
Yeah.
the whole scene of obtaining that crossbow was fantastic. And then every time you used it, you missed and hit Anton.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. Bing! I mean, to the point where Nora and I are playing in another game, and someone brought in a crossbow and missed, and he's I'm having flashbacks. Wasn't even with this group, and him and I are just the only two laughing. I think the GM might if she's still in chat.
Right.
So I love that everyone's got one. Everyone's got their moment. Everyone's got their thing, and that's one of the things that's made this so much fun to do. Is there's no, it's a full, OPT.
I was gonna say I still need to answer this.
I couldn't remember because you were dead.
I was I haven't answered this yet.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's do it.
So honestly, one of the more fun things that one hasn't been mentioned too isn't my character is watching Drake fall into anything of liquid/water that exists in a scene,
Including a manhole cover.
including a manhole cover or a
And a thousand
pothole.
nightmares.
Yeah, and a cauldron of nightmares.
Yeah. Manhole cover, pool, cauldron of nightmares.
Yeah, like
what can I say?
Yeah,
I roll bad in that game.
yeah. Every single time it's make a dramatic entrance. I don't think you've ever hit it once. Am I right on this?
No, I hit it once.
You did.
Or
That's
twice.
right. Yeah. But yeah, it's like
I think we'd be remiss without mentioning A, Lucha's cooking, and B, the bow and arrow off Anton's butt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That was the one we just hit.
Yeah, we did that. But the Lucha's cooking is another good one.
I do like the cooking. Yeah.
Yes.
I do have to give one more. I know
Go ahead.
PT will appreciate this one. just because it was something that happened with our next gen stuff, and that's just literally wanting to punch every single bad guy in the face.
Yes. Yes. Flo, just, can I punch him yet?
Yeah. Like,
I mean, don't get me wrong. Chase Cassidy needs to be punched in the face.
Oh,
If
yeah.
it hadn't been done, we need to do it again.
Yeah, well,
Yes, but when it gets to the point where Flo shows up at the prison just to punch Horshow in the face,
That's true. He just shows up, punches him, and leaves.
That's true. That's true.
That actually happened.
It's a damn-
Like, to me as a GM, that's the ultimate compliment based on the character, the bad guy I know I'm trying to make. It's like, oh, my players just want to punch him in the face. I'm doing good.
That's all. Yeah, we all just showed up at the jail. We needed to speak to him one night, but most of us were like, okay, can we punch him in the face yet? I think when Alex met Flo for the first time, that was brought up, and Alex is just like, yeah, we're gonna get along together great.
I think that brings another fantastic topic in. Villains. Because where would we be without the villains?
I mean, they drive the stories.
It'd be boring.
They do. They give us all the purpose. So, anyone got a favorite villain?
I mean, I already mentioned mine.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be a hard one for me because
They're all yours.
75% of them are mine.
Well, which one do you relate to the most?
Ooh, that's a good question.
So while Teach ponders that, because he'll be there a while. Trem, what's been your favorite villain out of this series?
well, I mean, I have to say that I really like the two major concepts we had for villains between Teach and I. His Zodiac bosses or villains and my elemental villains that are still out and about. But I'd have to say probably my favorite villain to go up against as Phantasm was oh goodness, why can't I remember his name?
Which one was it?
Phantasm's dark ego.
Oh,
Demise?
Demise, yes.
Demise was fantastic.
Yeah. Just because that was before I started any of the GMing stuff, that was the very first villain that was not a Teach villain.
Yes.
Nice. So, Chammy, you kind of touched on yours. Why do you like Stage Fright so much?
I enjoy it just because it reminds me a lot of like Dr. Teen Titan. Where like you have this wimpy guy who's like so nothing at first when you meet him. It's like, who is this jerk? And then like he recurs again and again. It's like, we just beat this guy for breakfast. He's barely a real threat. His stuff doesn't actually hurt anybody. Why is he even here? And then like you get really later into the story, and then suddenly this real little wimpy jerk guy gets some real power. And you start realizing, oh no, we actually have to start taking him seriously, and he's just as obnoxious.
Hopefully. So, Dark, what do you have for us, and why is it Vernon?
No, it's definitely not Vernon.
Oh, wow.
No, Vernon was actually one of my least liked characters, honestly.
I can see that.
It's hard to pick a favorite because there are just so many memorable ones.
They really have been.
I'm gonna have you come back to me now. I have to think about it because I have so many like favorite ones. I don't know.
So, OPT, what do you got for us?
Favorite villain? Goodness. I've been trying to think, and like that whole Kismet thing, like when we went to the future and whatnot, and we're fighting her there, and like that final boss battle, if you will, like that to me is one of my favorite setups. So I guess Kismet, therefore, would be one of, by default, therefore be one of my favorite villains. That, just because that final battle was like a very good mashup of everything, like everyone had to offer, like all the characters had to offer in that battle. I think everybody had their moment of that, if I remember correctly. I think everybody had some part in that, and it just kind of, it was a great setup, and it was just like a great, almost like pageantry. It was just great how it all came out. As much as, Kismet was just kind of confusing to me otherwise, but no, I like the concept and the whole. I just like the whole like King Arthur thing too. I guess because I'm a sucker for that kind of thing.
No, Kismet was definitely one of my favorite arcs in general. I love that, but I think my favorite villain has got to be Drake's nemesis in Tyrannus.
Oh yes,
the battles we had played out so well because Drake literally could not fight him.
Yeah, we
got crushed.
Yeah.
Got crushed
Yeah.
in those fights.
Yes.
That's honestly one of the best. Going back to masks real quick, one of the best things about that whole system is that you keep losing and losing and losing, and suddenly you have an automatic win button.
Yes, and that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Drake lost that fight so much that when the moment was right, our first moment of truth happened.
Mm.
Yep.
And
Big one too.
Drake went ham on Enteritus. And that was one of those story moments where it was just so fantastic as a player to have that unbridled power of we really haven't touched on the moment of truth. The moment of truth basically says, you do what you want, they deal with it.
Pretty much.
No. So I feel like I'm copping out with this whole favorite villain thing because I have my favorite villains as a GM, but I also have my favorite villain to deal with as a player. And it's weird because my favorite villain from the player side of things sort of spins into me as a GM as well, because the initial creation of this villain was me, but everything else about said villain was Krim, and that would be Siobhan.
Mm-hmm.
I just love how everything about her turned up, that she turns into this, oh, I'm going to be this manipulative person, blah, blah. Like, no, I'm just an evil, evil woman who wants all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love that character arc. For me, personally, there are two villains I enjoy playing. Well, three totally, but Chammy brought up my favorite. Stage Fright is the one I enjoy playing the most, 100%. But to compound on that eccentric personality, that Lord Tiberius, the head of the Brimstone House, the really eccentric old man who offered you all the chicken nuggies, like he is so much fun to play. But from a, I don't want to say villain perspective, but from the antagonist perspective, you mentioned him earlier, Chase Cassidy.
Yes. He was good too.
Yeah.
Like, I love that concept of, I'm the reporter. Yes, I have this past and I don't people know, but like, I'm trying to do right by people without revealing why I'm trying to do right by them, and I might come across as bad because of it.
Chase Cassidy was good enough that I actually didn't think of him as a villain. I thought of him as like, as you said, the antagonist.
Yeah.
Right, which is why I specifically used that word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he definitely, and you've given us some very memorable villains. Dark, have you got one for us now?
No, I mean I love the Kismet arc also, and I liked a lot of the coin bosses. I thought a lot of those were really cool.
Yeah, those are fun to make.
That was a fun arc. That whole set and that whole arc of having the coins, having the amulets, and leading up towards that end goal of Kismet was really a good story arc. It was a lot of fun to be a part of.
Well, I think the thing with that was it allowed all of us our own individual arcs. We all got to do our own strengths, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, T, you spoke a little bit about Siobhan or Salome, or the maiden of many different names.
Yes.
So here's an interesting thing that I don't think you and I have ever had to talk about, and that was the main driving, because we've talked about sort of where we draw our inspiration from, but the main driving factor of what her character was.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an interesting one because you and I don't know if we've ever had discussions about this show or not. But when I was coming up with her personality and sort of just the pure evil, I actually shaped that around the first 2 years of the Regina Mills character from Once Upon a Time.
Wow. Once Upon a Time is a criminally underrated show, by the way.
Yeah. So,
I've never seen it.
It takes fairy tales and
yeah.
turns them on their heads.
Yeah, basically it was a Disney show, so it takes all your Disney princesses and everything, but it sort of morphs it into I don't want to say a real life, but it basically makes all those characters exist as if they were in a real life situation, and they have like an alternate universe where stuff's happening in one is happening in the other, and it is really, really well done.
Interesting.
But the character of Regina Mills is also known as she was Ursula. She was the evil queen in the first few episodes or first few seasons, and everything she did was intentional in fulfilling her own goal, and she would not stop at anything to get to that. So she would manipulate anyone and everyone she had to.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
So-
I need to go watch.
So, I think we've hit all the questions I've come up with. Chad, if you still have anything, feel free. If you're watching on YouTube, always reach us at Bay City Chronicles on Twitter. Give us more questions anytime. But anyone, keep the conversation going. What do we have? We've done, almost 4 hours of roundtable.
So we've talked a lot about what we like. What have you guys not liked?
That's a fantastic question. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, well, I'll go on this because I think it's an illustration of how I enjoy games differently. But like when it comes to like engaging with masks compared to like BCC, one thing that we did is we played a game called Middleton City, where RBT was actually GMing the game,
Yeah.
and I liked that a lot.
You like
One of the
ketchup on your
reasons I liked
sandwiches
it, though,
too.
Yes, and because of that character is why I liked it so much. One of the things I enjoyed about it is that from a mechanical perspective, it allowed me to do something mechanically interesting and unique. I enjoyed the aspect of getting caught up in a mechanic system a little bit sometimes, and I liked the idea of having a character whose actions were literally random in terms of like the stuff he had to work with, the abilities he had to work with. Like I
Wait,
enjoyed
does
the
that-
characters in RPGs.
Does that randomness include putting ketchup on sandwiches?
No, that was a deliberate and evil act.
The real villain, Chammy's character from
Yeah.
Middleton.
Chet.
Chet Sid.
Chet's it.
But the thing is, I enjoyed doing that kind of a thing where there was like almost an enforced structure, like a very video gamey type thing, where like this random number generator is essentially determining your fate in terms of like what you're actually doing, and that's not something I think is as possible in Masks, where you have to ask like, what do you do? And in this, it was more like, well, what does happen to me, and what do I do with this thing that I kind of chose that I get and kind of don't?
I am sorry, but the random number generator thing just doesn't work for me, because then I have to totally restructure my entire day because you might totally screw it up, and I just can't do that.
Back in your cage, sir.
That's right, you weren't a part of that game, so you never had to experience Crim's OCD character.
He was.
I was part of that game.
Yeah, he was part of the game.
There was a fight started in a Mega Mart because the expiration date on the milk wasn't 7 days, it was only 6.
Yep.
And full disclosure, like after Krim does that character for so long, for a couple hours of a session, I feel twitchy afterwards.
You
I mean,
they know how I feel when I play Eric!
yeah, and then there's Eric. But yeah, no, I feel you there, Shammy. Sometimes the stakes aren't as real. Having that opportunity. I know we all tried an off-stream version of D&D, and having that character get just shredded and have real world consequences that are your character's dead.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
It's different.
I think also, like, I do admittedly get a little bit tired of playing so many different. Because we do have, I think, like 4 or 5 of them going on. Like,
I think most of us have 4 at least.
Yeah, and like that's just a little bit too much. Like, even if I really like something, I enjoy variety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So who wants to go next?
Like, I guess, as you guys know, my biggest issue is complex stories to the point where I've completely lost track of everything that's happening. It's part of my other issues in general, whatnot. With, but like, part of me is if I, not that I need the whole thing's explained out, but like sometimes I feel like people are drawing from inspirations and. I especially early on, I thought that you needed to have knowledge of what those were, and I don't play any of these games. I don't remember any of this stuff. I don't the Zodiacs or whatever. I don't know what any half that is. And I'm like sitting there like, is that the way everyone else was talking about them? It's like, okay, so was I supposed to know that beforehand? Was there like a reading assignment I missed? Like,
and I think once we sort of caught up on that frustration that was happening, we sort of changed it from, hey, this is just introduction to it. We sort of flipped it a little bit to where we purposely put the background in the story so that there would be a little bit more understanding. Yeah. And like me personally, I never pushed anything into there expecting people to know it. I put it in there because and this is sort of going off topic, but something like Regina Mills or something like Final Fantasy 12 or something like, Star Wars, Disney, what have you. If I think the creators of that specific thing did such a brilliant job, I think it's a great base to sort of carry over, saying, this is just amazing stuff, and I love this work so much that I want to sort of highlight it in my own creative way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, want to build on it.
Yeah.
The other thing it does, especially from a GM perspective, is you throw something in there, you already know what they are. So it's one less mental loop you have to jump through. Like, for example, like we bring up the Zodiac. I can go into I can type in to Google Chat. I can go or to Google search bar. I can go and look up the Zodiac bosses from Final Fantasy 12 or Final Fantasy Tactics, whatever it is, and I can get information on them. So I don't have to write 12 baby backstories for these villains. I have it all. And a lot of times for me, like when I'm saying, oh, this is blank, it's not to necessarily give your character's backstory. It's to give you, as the player, if you know about it, where my inspiration is coming from.
The trick of that is, though, if the player doesn't know it, you got to be ready for that, too.
Right.
Google Foo is strong.
Let me Google that for you. It's one of my favorite websites. It's so passively sarcastic.
Right.
So let's see. That's Chammy, OPT, and Grim.
Came with instructions.
I didn't really say anything. I mean, I sort of touched on it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I sort of touched on it earlier with the structure of Mask. That was one thing I kind of disliked. I can sort of echo the multiple storylines. But I would have to say if there's anything that I've really disliked, honestly, and this feels like kind of a cop-out because it's something that none of us can control. But I think one of the biggest things I've disliked is just this past year with everything outside of this group, with everything that's happening, it was very hard for me to mentally get into a place to game.
Yeah.
A lot of nights. And
I can see that.
And the fact that I took over a GM role and there were just weeks that I could not draw inspiration or get creative enough to make what I want. And it frustrated me because then I feel like I'm letting every single other person down and that I'm letting a very, very good story that I'm very invested in sort of just go to waste because I sort of can't build that ambition to get down and write and stuff like that, whether it be because I'm consumed with work or I'm going through personal stuff, or 3 people are out because of various different things, so we have to push it off a week and then off another week, and it's just there's so much different stuff, and when that ambition dies, trying to get it back, and sometimes that's just very frustrating. And I mean, I think that was my biggest problem, especially this last year, was just that that lack of energy that I had a lot of nights, and I do get like it can get to that point when you've been doing something for 3 years. So
yeah,
no, definitely. Dark, you posed the question. Let's throw it to you.
I think my biggest regret with this is I made a change to Malkir, which I've been honest about last maybe 4 episodes ago, and it just completely fell through to the point where it wasn't what I expected. So it's kind of like I regret with my character, which kind of makes it that's not fun to play him, but just not what I had wanted. So I kind of have to retcon him now.
Oh.
Yeah, I honestly think that happens a lot more in games in general, especially if you've been playing a character for so long, that you want to, evolve the character, and make a change and whatnot, and you do, and then it suddenly just doesn't click with you so much. I mean, that's... I completely understand that, and I feel like, I've done that before with, a character or two. I know, Cham was playing your Ironclaw game with Floyd. I tried to make a change to him, and I didn't like it to the point where I literally retired the character.
You did. You just kind of walked out of the campaign there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just decided to play something else.
No, I absolutely feel you there, Dark. I'm going to go last, Teach. I want you to go here on this one.
See, that's an interesting story, an interesting question, because as a GM, I try to take things that I didn't feel good about running and put them behind me, take the lessons learned from them, and forget they happened. So it's not that there wasn't things I wasn't disappointed with that happened or all that. It's that I have forgotten a lot of what they were to take the lessons learned from them and to move on to other things, to take the conversations that we've had and to do it. So there are probably some minor things here and there that, okay, this or that or whatever. But honestly, from my perspective, just from being the GM for the first 2 years of what we were doing here, there's not an episode where I look back and go, I wish we hadn't done that. There may be a scene here, a scene there, but they don't stick out in my head to the point where it's like, I am so mad we did that. There is no scene like that. Because, if I look back and we talk about, the scenes or this leading up to certain big moments, everything that happened, whether it was a big grand fight scene or a small little discussion, all seemed like they had a purpose. And from my perspective in the GM chair for a good portion of this is, if a scene is serving a purpose, whether it's to progress the story being told, to progress the character arcs, or just to show what our characters do in their downtime, because they're not heroes 24/7.
Right.
So I would have to literally sit here for 20, 30 minutes to go back through all of the notes that I have, which I don't even have access to right now because they're in the other room, about, what I liked, what I didn't like, That's like I said, ultimately, from sitting in my chair from the GM side of things, if you looked at me and said, as a GM, I would stop you before you finish the question and go check out what we did in BCC. Because you look at just the whole body of work, there's nothing I'm upset that happened.
What about system-wise or mechanics-wise? Is there anything kind of grind your gears, so to speak, about the way certain things work?
I mean, yes and no. It depends on the mood that you're in, honestly. I know when I'm playing a Mutants and Masterminds game, that there's a certain. I know the certain mechanics I'm getting into. Mass is another thing entirely. Ultimately, like yes, there are mechanics in masks that, or in masks and mutants and masterminds that sort of like, okay, why is this a thing? But nothing that's going to detract from my enjoyment of doing it. And like my biggest gripe in mutants and masterminds, it has nothing to do with this group. It has to do with stuff that's happened in my IRL group that we've kind of created some things, house rules that are a little too on the this is a little OP side of things. So it just skews everything in a direction. Mm-hmm. And what I love about this is it allows me to take everything that's been skewed in the house rules and to skew them back normal.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that would lead me to another question for you, specifically, and possibly you two also, Krim, and actually LPT and Cham also run games, so I can probably fill in too. As a GM, do you ever get disappointed with how characters that are playing the characters that like act in a certain event that maybe you may not have appreciated as a GM?
I can totally answer this immediately.
Go ahead.
Because it was like there was one point in the Kalu City where I remember thinking I'm probably not just going to run this game anymore.
What was that?
It was when you guys first went to this like citadel, like I have, and just jumped into it, like with like this whole thing that I was like in my mind had all of this defense and everything like that. You fly in with an invisible car, just jump in the center of it and try to do the thing you want to do, and I'm like. I literally cannot stop this because every single time they're just smashing their, like, power rolls. I'm like, I can't do anything about this. And it wasn't even just that. It was the fact that in my mind, like, y'all came in, like, covered in marshmallow goop and, like, shooting Skittles and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, clearly no one is taking this, like, final boss area, like, seriously at all. And I felt... Yeah, well, and I felt, like, completely just, like... uninvested in the game at that point, and I remember I don't remember if I said it or if I felt it, but I'm like, I don't know if I could GM this again. Like, I honestly don't even know if I can or not. But
it was a struggle.
I took like I don't remember how, but it was like when I figured out what the consequence of that was going to be, which was a lot of things are just going to happen. And I'm like, okay, I can run this again. And after that, I feel like is when I finally evolved in my GMing of masks. That was like, okay, look, your players are going to be silly and wacky, and at the same time they're going to be serious, but they're going to do weird stuff. Just freaking run with it. And honestly, at that point, I feel like is when, at least in my mind, the game actually got better. Is when I just let go of the reins and just like, you guys do whatever the hell you want, and then just figure it out later.
So you took a potential negative, turned into a positive. So that's
pretty much, yeah.
Again, a positive situation.
Yeah.
To go back to the initial question you asked, though, like as a GM, like especially in the first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 issues when you're running with characters, that's when your characters are being defined. So as a GM, for the first X number of episodes, you never have an idea how your character is going to react. And this is to go back to the whole like you asked the question, Chammy, of is there negative things about systems that you like or don't like? The biggest thing, like if you start playing a role-playing game with Dungeons and Dragons, the biggest thing that I despise about Dungeons and Dragons for new players is the alignment system.
Oh, yeah.
Not that it doesn't serve a purpose, because it does. But the alignment system puts people in a box that they're too afraid to come out of.
Yeah.
And... You hear the joke all the time that paladins aren't lawful good, they're lawful stupid. Exactly. So, like,
paladin here.
To me, when you're first getting to know your players, like, yes, you have this alignment, but the first 10, 11, whatever it is, episodes, you're getting, like, the players are getting to know the character just as much as you as the GM are getting to know the character. So, if something's acting, quote-unquote, outside of character, okay, I have to look at the situation. Why are they acting outside of character? Does it fit in with all the other personality quirk traits that we've seen? And if you answer that question and you can see how the character would react that way based on the situation, it's not something I wasn't expecting. It's layering to the character. So as a GM, I'm never going to be upset with people RPing and putting layers in their character.
Mm-hmm.
So I still owe an answer here, and this one's going to be outside of the game a bit. So one of the things that I put a lot of pressure on myself. I was traveling, and I hated canceling shows because I was traveling. So I pushed myself more to make every game that I could and to not skip weeks. And it took a toll. So not taking the time to take care of myself as a person before joining the games. I wasn't in the right headspace to play Anton because I wasn't in the right headspace as myself. Same with Drake and Apollo. I took a break. I walked away from all of it. I almost left entirely because I pushed myself too hard and had all of the other things going on in my life that these guys have supported me through, and they're still going on. But I didn't take that time for myself to just back off.
Yep. Absolutely.
So that really, and now that I've noticed that, I enjoy playing my characters now because I've gotten help. I've gone and seen a doctor. I've been talking about my mental health. This is my first time really talking about it on stream in any way. But, I've gone and gotten the help I need to be in the right headspace. Because without it, it's hard to be someone else when you can't even be yourself.
I can completely vouch for that. I mean, I feel like another part of my better interactions with everybody is after I started medicating.
Oh, sure.
I mean, there's been days where I've worked a 10-hour day to come home on a Sunday night, like literally still in uniform to play the game, or just like I just want to go lay in my bed. So it's, I know how that is too.
Just lay in your bed, put your laptop on, put a picture of your face in front of the camera, and you're good.
Just turn the light off like you've done now.
See, benefits of putting the face in front of the camera, no pants.
Yes.
See, I have my niece in my room, so that's another kind of like regret I have that I have no control over. Is where I stream, there's someone who's asleep in the same room, so I can't show the emotion I would want to show in a typical situation. Like I can't get excited because I'd wake them up.
Right.
I have to kind of ASMR it, but at the same time, ASMRing it doesn't allow me to vocalize like excitement, for example, or anger. Like, I can't get invested because I can't wake them up.
So here I thought you just had incredible emotional control. Like you just kind of like had this like low level of like he's feeling it, but he's like a calm river where it's like nice and smooth at the top, but underneath he's bubbling.
Right, but more than anything, and you see this. None of us want to bail on a show. None of us want to bail on Sunday, but we have things that come up. We get work. We have mental issues. We have weather issues, power issues.
Honestly, I think like this year, I think everybody here has been more okay with just like not running a game for like over a week or so, just because I think we've all gotten to that point where we're all just like, I just need to step back or, whatever, to one extent or another, or just like I've got too much going on. This group has been extremely like, well with like someone saying, hey, I can't make it, or like I'm too busy, or I literally just can't play tonight, and we all just either just cancel the game or the rest of us will do a different game so we don't lose like the player in that storyline. That's part of the reason why we have so many games going on, which for better or worse, that is the reason why we have a lot of them. That and like part of it is because multiples of us.
It's fun.
Multiples wanted to GM games. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Shout out to Among Us and Killinor and Electrical. We have falling back on.
Yeah, but and that's if you don't see us on stream on a Sunday, we're still chatting. We're still planning. We want to have a product every week, but. Real life comes first, and our own mental health comes first, and we try. And like we said, we've got several different shows. So if we have certain people out, we put on a different show, or we move the show to a different day. We drop different things. The flexibility that the group has put out has really made something that you don't see in D&D groups. You don't see in other tabletop groups.
Just
if you take a, I'll get right to you, Jim. If you take a break in a D&D group, for more than a week, that group never comes back together. It just doesn't happen. You have to start a new campaign. That group's done. And we've managed to go 3 years taking all sorts of insanity.
Right.
But I think part of that is that we're all dedicated to our characters and we're all dedicated to the story we're telling. Jamie, go ahead.
Well, kind of like jumping onto that, something to kind of, I guess, partially share is that with my own experiences sometimes, I actually have had groups of friends where if I was not able to attend a group meeting or I wasn't able to kind of like go out and do something with them, the reverse reaction from it would sometimes be so bad that I would not hear from them or from those guys for like maybe a month at most, sometimes a couple weeks. Like it would just be such a massive social backlash for not being able to carry through with doing plans or like making a social faux pas in that sense. And so like I came in with a lot of like natural nervousness and a lot of like natural guilt about that kind of stuff when it came to like doing group plans and like having like moments like I don't feel like playing, I don't feel like jamming, I'm not sure if I'm up for it. And like the fact that all of you guys have been like super chill about it, it almost throws me off my game entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, wait a second, so like I'm not exiled or like so it's okay, like nobody's even like angry at me. Like what is this nonsense?
Jimmy.
Do you see the art around all of our faces? If we exiled you, we'd have to find a new artist.
More than that, though. If we were going to exile you, it would have been putting ketchup on a damn sandwich.
I mean, yeah.
True. Yeah.
That would have been
The serious part of that, though. I mean, there's been days where like I've gone from work and I've been like, guys, I can't play, sorry. And then instantly I'll get 40 M's from pretty much almost all of you. Hey, are you doing okay? Something
You good? Everything good?
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, I got that too.
And that's why I think this has been so successful, is we all care about each other on a limit outside of the game. We're all friends outside of the game. We're not just 6 random people thrown together. Mm-hmm. I think that's brought us more together than the average group.
Yeah, definitely. So, I don't think we're going to have a part 3. I'm the first one to successfully not multi-part a series after I started.
Quit while you're ahead.
I mean, to be fair, we probably could do another, but
I mean, yeah, we probably could, but I mean,
At that point, we're just vlogging.
that's about true.
Well, I think the plan that we discussed, and we have to put it into some further detail and refinement, is doing a quarterly version of this, or some timed version of this, where we get together, we discuss the last quarter of shows, and progress the narrative of how this is going for us as we roll out new products, retire old products, return heroes. As Malkir's talking, about changing books.
You say bring out old products and retire old products, bring out new ones. We only have one product, and that's Kestrel Crunchy.
Thought we had something else.
No,
I actually was going to make Malkier murder hobo, like with an O at the end. I never got around to finishing it.
Well, I don't even know what to say to that.
So is the new running gag going to be everyone gets one hero with their own cereal?
I mean, sure. I mean, Apollo has to have a cereal at this point,
I mean,
or at least a loot box.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, I think the idea is I think this has been fun. This has been a fun 2 weeks of sitting down, not playing, charging our batteries, and really having fun talking about all the fun stuff we've done. I mean, it's been 3 years of insanity.
Mm. Yeah, it has been.
Yeah.
It's gone fast.
No, it has. It really, like, we've started talking about episode counts, and, we're talking about hitting episode 100 and stuff. It's like, we should be close on Bay City, I would imagine.
I think we're at like 70-something.
I don't even remember.
I can check. I'm on YouTube.
I wouldn't use that. It's not.
I wouldn't trust YouTube. It's not accurate.
It's not been updated forever.
Well, the Bay City Chronicles proper is updated. It's got
everything else.
It's missing a couple of the latest ones, but for the most part, it'll give us a rough estimate.
Right.
But, yeah, I have our first episode of BCC on May 15th, 2008.
18.
18. Right.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so that would be our first upload.
Yeah.
And here it is, January 3rd, 2021. Still going strong. And like I said, we're closing in rapidly on... Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, that was April 4th, 2018. I'm reading the journal wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
I opened up Hero Labs for the first time in, like, a long time. Like, even
That's
when we play BCC anymore, I don't even open up Hero Labs.
Yeah. So the Bay City Chronicles playlist in YouTube has 64 entries, which starts at 1-1 New Beginnings and goes all the way to the beginning of volume 6. So we've got 5 in chapter 6, I believe, plus the one that didn't get uploaded because of video corruption. So we've got 70 episodes.
Yeah. Plus we have almost 20 of Halo City. We've got however many of Next Gens, 20, 25, somewhere in there. Emerald City. They've, all of this stuff.
Number in those,
yeah. And they're still going strong. So, and who knows? Dark and I might run our own show here soon. Who am I kidding? I'm not running anything.
I don't think I'm creative enough for that. Plus, I can't emote enough for that because, again, I don't have my own office at the moment.
And T just looking scared. But no, I mean, I look forward to this new year, this 2021, of doing more insanity with all of y'all. It has been the most fun. I look forward to it. I get messages and someone saying, let's run Kalu City tonight. The Evil Salem laughing gif immediately gets posted, and I'm cackling in my chair thinking of what stupid thing I'm going to do today.
He sends me a message, and usually it just contains 3 words. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, here's something stupid, here it comes. Bay City, love it, love the product. It's been so good to us. It's been so much fun and so rewarding. Like, it's been really great to see everyone take the stage and everyone have their moment to shine and enjoy it. And then Teach laugh maniacally as he slaps us down. So, I know it's getting late for some of you. Some of you have to go to bed, looking at you, OPT.
Some should go to bed, whether I want to.
That makes you a brave man, Nora.
What?
Looking at OPT.
Yes, you're not wrong. So, let's kind of close this out. Final thoughts on the 3 years we've had and whatever future we're looking at. We'll just go around the table. We'll start with Krim, and we'll go around back to me. So, Krim, closing thoughts?
Well, first of all, you said whatever future that was TGE's arc. What's the future thing?
Yes.
But no, I've really enjoyed it. Honestly, as much of a struggle as it's been the past few months, I'm really looking forward to closing out the BCC proper arc. Because I do believe, unless TG has something else planned, when we finish this part of the arc, it will probably be the end of the story that started all of this. Not the end of the group necessarily, but the end of that story. So I am looking forward at trying to dive back in and get to writing and developing some of these characters a little bit more and really telling a damn good story. It's been a lot of fun watching everyone grow, everyone's characters grow, and really really getting to a point where I felt comfortable enough stepping into a GM role and running a little bit of this just because I love the story that much, and I wanted to have a little bit more of a footprint on it myself.
Oh, thanks, Krim. Chammy.
So, what I'm looking forward to, right?
Final thoughts and whatever you're looking forward to.
Yeah. Just final thought there.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a great ride so far. I'm really glad I got into this, of course. I'm also looking forward to BCC proper itself tying a bow at the end of its current arc, and kind of like ending it for the moment. Not because I want it to end, or because I'm tired of the characters or anything like that, but just because having an actual satisfying ending to a game is something I have yet to really experience.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that.
That's true.
But I think this has been a great experience so far, and I'm glad that I hopped into this. And the other thing I'm kind of looking forward to is, honestly, I am looking forward to kind of stepping more into my own when it comes to running Emerald City and giving you guys kind of a fun experience there. But I'm also looking forward just to getting into our other stories and growing our characters. I want to see how Sync grows. I want to see what happens to Gianna. I'm also kind of interested to see how her story ends. I'm very interested to see like how these stories grow.
Definitely. They've been fantastic stories. We're happy to have you here, Champion. You were a fantastic addition to this crew. Dark.
So, I mean, it's basically kind of what everyone said. This has just been an overall fantastic experience in general. And like I said, growing up, I never had a group of friends to play games with like this. So now do I have friends? I have a group of 5 other brothers now that I can get together with on a Sunday night and not just shoot the crap, but play and have fun. And just even outside of this, like we all got together, minus you, Teach, unfortunately. Minus you, Nora, sorry. And we all got together, and that was a blast. And I hope that we can, sometime in 2021, all 6 of us can get together at some point.
I'd love that.
That'd be nice, yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I want to see happen is at some point here is I want us to be able to go somewhere as a group of all of us to have some way of filming it, streaming it. I want the live session, and if we can't stream it, that's fine. But that's the biggest thing I want to see is I want the full live session where you can all be sitting around the table and hear this noise.
Right.
Yes.
There's
So I think
about that.
I'll come right back to you, Teach, but OPT, your final thoughts.
Oh, well, I know I mentioned it before, but like this, having this group together and being able to play tabletop RPG games, which I didn't really understand how much I needed that in my life. But having you guys be here with me as I have gone through basically my entire mental health treatment starting in like May of 2018, and just having you guys kind of help just be here for me and just help me see that that evolution of myself, and not just as a person in general but also as a GM and someone who I feel like I've become even better at telling a story from the GM's perspective rather than just the player's perspective too. So I just look forward to growing further with this group, and just in general. I'm looking forward to seeing just what comes next and knowing that whatever it is, it's going to make me better as a person, as a player, as a GM, as a friend. And you guys are very much so responsible for helping me get through some of the darkest times of my life. So thank you all for that.
I'm going to make people cry.
Yeah.
That's what I mean,
that's our
goal.
goal.
That is literally what I do every week, so.
He is a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, then there's that, too.
All right, Teach. Give us your final thoughts, your plans.
So I can't tell you my plans because I'm running something.
I was trying to get the scoop early so we can plot.
I knew what you were trying to do. I ain't giving you my plans that early. We got a part 3 coming up, so that's what you can plan on, is part 3. No, but honestly...
Part 7,192.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yes. And Chammy, the word you're looking for in chat is furries, not fuzzies. No, but in all honesty, what I'm looking forward to is... It's going to sound weird to say this because I love all the characters we've created. But I'm looking forward to seeing their stories wrap up so new stories can begin.
Yeah.
And whether it's in Mutants and Masterminds or Masks or D&D or another system we haven't come across yet, I'm looking forward to all of the stories that we can put together as a group just to see what magic we can make.
Right. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm looking forward most of all to more stories, more shenanigans, and just absolute insane pratfalls that we can just come up with. It's just we've one-upped everything we've ever done every time we do it. But I'm also looking forward to spending time with these 5 wonderful people and telling fantastic stories. And speaking of stories, I think that's a good spot for us to wrap up tonight.
No, not quite, not quite.
Oh, what?
There's one thing you're missing, Nora.
Oh boy, what is it?
You know what we haven't had yet tonight?
Dark
A
World
bright
1.
flash of light.
Well, fine.
OPT didn't set up that transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Fire the streamer! Fire the streamer!
All right. No one's
Trevor, why you
holding
no
to that.
content?
No, but that does bring us to a good close here. So do tune in next week. If we are playing Next Gen, it will be Elephant's Memory Part 3, leading into Part 4 and 5 and 6. And if we're playing Bay City proper, I don't have a title from Krim yet, but I've got a good working title for him.
Do tell, because you're probably wrong.
The Return of a Hero.
Possibly.
That's foreshadowing at its finest.
Funny, you said that, and all that popped into my head was, "I need a hero."
I'd enjoy that, yeah.
The end of the night. Hey, we're gonna get these CMA stuff.
I'm surprised we haven't already, but I don't have a witty line like Tej keep hailing or whatever Krim does to close things off. But for OPT Lawyer, for Crimson Avix, for Tej, for Dark Falls, and for Chameleon Ice, I am Noratia. Thank you very much for hanging out with us the last 4 hours, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Bay City show.